The moment I saw my son's signature on that insurance document, my hands started shaking. What I discovered in the following weeks would force me to make the hardest decision of my life, one that would tear our family apart but save my conscience. I'm Richard, and I'm 63 years old. I spent 40 years working as an accountant in Toronto before retiring to a quiet neighborhood in Mississauga. My wife, Margaret, passed away 6 years ago from cancer, leaving me alone in our modest 3-bedroom home. Our only son, Michael, is 35 now. He lives about 20 minutes away in Oakville with his fiancée, Jessica. Michael had always been my pride and joy. Smart kid, got his business degree from Western University, worked his way up to sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, or at least, that's what I thought until 3 months ago. It started on a Tuesday evening in October. I remember because I'd just finished watching the Maple Leafs game when my phone rang. It was Michael. "Dad, I've been in an accident," he said. His voice sounded strained, worried. My heart jumped into my throat. "Are you okay? What happened? Where are you?" "I'm fine, Dad. Just a fender bender on the QEW. Some guy rear-ended me at a red light. My neck's a bit sore, but I'm okay. The paramedics checked me out." "Thank God," I breathed. "Do you need me to come get you?" No. Jessica's picking me up. The car's drivable, just some damage to the bumper. "But Dad, I need to ask you a favor." "Anything, son. What do you need?" There was a pause. "My insurance company needs some documentation. Since I'm still on your policy as a secondary driver, they need you to sign some forms. Can I drop by tomorrow?" This struck me as odd. Michael had his own insurance policy, had for years, but I chalked it up to some technicality I didn't understand. Insurance paperwork was never my strong suit. "Of course. Come by around 10. I'll make us coffee." The next morning, Michael arrived right on time. He looked fine, no visible injuries, though he did have a slight limp and kept rubbing his neck. He was carrying a thick manila envelope. "How are you feeling?" I asked, as he sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Margaret and I had shared countless meals over the years. "Sore, but okay. The doctor said I might have some whiplash. Here, these are the forms." He pulled out several documents and a pen. "Just need your signature on the highlighted lines." I reached for my reading glasses and started to skim through the papers. They looked official enough. Insurance company letterhead, lots of legal jargon. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked. "Just verification that I was using the car with your permission. Standard stuff. The insurance company is being difficult because the other driver's claiming it wasn't their fault." Something in his tone made me pause. Michael had always been straightforward with me, but now he seemed eager, almost pushy, for me to sign quickly. "Let me read through these properly," I said. "Dad, it's fine. My lawyer already reviewed everything. I just need your signature so I can submit the claim today." "Your lawyer? Since when do you have a lawyer for a simple accident?" "Jessica's brother. You remember Tyler? He's helping me out." I did remember Tyler. Nice enough guy, but I'd heard he'd gotten into some trouble a few years back. Something about fraud, though the charges were eventually dropped. Still, I trusted my son. I signed the documents where he indicated. He seemed relieved, almost too relieved. "Thanks, Dad. This really helps." He gathered the papers quickly and stood up. "I've got to run. Meeting with the insurance adjuster this afternoon." "Wait, don't you want your coffee?" We barely talked. "Sorry, I'm running late. I'll call you this weekend. We'll grab dinner." And then he was gone, leaving me sitting alone at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and an uneasy feeling in my gut. That unease grew over the following days. Michael didn't call that weekend like he'd promised. When I tried reaching him, his responses were short, distant. "Busy with work, Dad. Talk soon." Then, 2 weeks after the accident, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was from my insurance company. "Mr. Patterson, this is Sandra Chen from Apex Insurance. I'm calling about your son Michael's accident claim." "Yes? Is there a problem?" "We just need to verify some details." According to the police report, the accident occurred at 2:47 p.m. on October 10th at the intersection of Lakeshore and Ontario Street. Can you confirm your son had permission to use your vehicle at that time?" "My vehicle? I'm sorry. There must be some confusion. Michael was driving his own car. There was a pause. Sir, the claim is for your 2019 Honda CR-V, license plate BGFT 294. Ice flooded my veins. That was my car. But on October 10th at 2:47 p.m., my car had been parked in my garage. I'd been home all day, watching the game. There's been a mistake, I said carefully. My car wasn't in any accident. Another pause. Longer this time. Mr. Patterson, we have a signed statement from you confirming that your son had permission to drive your vehicle. We also have photos of the damage and medical documentation. I need to see these documents. Can you email them to me? I'm afraid I can't discuss this further over the phone, but you should know that we're opening an investigation into this claim. Insurance fraud is a serious matter. Insurance fraud. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. After I hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time, staring at the photos on the mantel. Michael as a little boy, his high school graduation, his mother's proud smile as he received his university degree. Had I raised someone capable of fraud? I needed to know the truth. I went to my garage and examined my CR-V carefully. The bumper was pristine, no damage at all. But when I opened the trunk, I found something that made my blood run cold. Tucked in the spare tire well was a folder. Inside were photos of my car with what looked like significant rear-end damage. But something was off about these photos. The dent pattern didn't match typical collision damage. It looked staged, artificial. There was also a receipt from a body shop in Hamilton dated 3 days before the supposed accident. The work order said, cosmetic damage repair, bumper and taillight, and the price, $800. My hands were shaking as I looked through the rest of the folder. There were medical bills from a chiropractor, all dated after the accident, receipts for a rental car, and most damning of all, text messages printed out between Michael and someone named Jay. The messages made me sick. Got the photos done? Looks real enough? Dad signed everything. He didn't even read it. Tyler says we can get at least $50K with the injury claim. Maybe more if we push the whiplash angle. Easy money. These insurance companies have millions. They won't even notice. I had to sit down before I fell down. My son wasn't just committing fraud. He'd involved me, made me an accessory. Those documents I'd signed weren't just verification. They were false statements to an insurance company. I spent the rest of that day feeling like my world had collapsed. Margaret would have known what to do. She'd always been better at handling Michael, at seeing through his excuses. But she was gone, and I was alone with this terrible knowledge. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my mind. When had Michael changed? Or had he always been capable of this and I'd just been blind to it? I remembered incidents from his teenage years that I'd dismissed. Money going missing from my wallet. Lies about where he'd been. Margaret had been worried, had wanted to get him counseling. But I'd said he was just being a teenager. Boys will be boys, I'd said. Had I failed him? Had I been too easy on him? Too quick to believe his excuses? The next morning, I decided I needed to know more before confronting him. I needed to understand the full extent of what he was doing. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was David Morrison, recommended by an old colleague. Ex-police officer, now ran his own firm. I met him at a Tim Hortons in Burlington. Tell me everything, he said after I'd given him the basics. I showed him the documents, the photos, the text messages. He studied them carefully, his expression darkening. Mr. Patterson, if what you're telling me is true, your son isn't just committing insurance fraud. He's part of a larger operation. These staged accidents, the involvement of a lawyer, the coordination with a body shop, this is organized. What do you mean, organized? Insurance fraud rings. They stage accidents, file false claims, split the money. It's more common than you'd think. And if your son is involved... He trailed off, seeing my face. How long will it take you to find out? Give me a week. I'll tail him. Check out this body shop in Hamilton. See who else is involved. But Mr. Patterson, I have to ask, what are you going to do with this information? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I don't know yet, I admitted, but I need to know the truth first. David Morrison was thorough. Over the next week, he sent me daily reports, and with each report, my heart sank deeper. Michael wasn't working as a sales manager anymore. He'd been fired 6 months ago for falsifying expense reports. He'd been hiding it from everyone, including Jessica. Instead of working, he'd been spending his days at a pool hall in Hamilton, meeting with Tyler and a group of other men. The body shop was owned by Tyler's uncle. They specialized in insurance work, code for staging accidents, and repairing the fake damage. Morrison estimated they'd been running this operation for at least 2 years, filing dozens of false claims. Michael's role was to recruit vehicles. Because he was clean, no criminal record, middle-class background, his claims looked legitimate. He'd bring in cars, they'd stage the damage, file the claims, and split the money. My car wasn't the first. Morrison found evidence of at least 3 other vehicles Michael had used. One belonged to Jessica's mother, another to a friend from university. Each time, he'd gotten them to sign documents, making them unwitting accomplices. The final report included photos. Michael at the body shop, laughing with Tyler and the others. Michael counting cash in his car. Michael at a casino in Niagara Falls, gambling away hundreds of dollars, while Jessica thought he was at work. I felt like I didn't know my son at all. But the worst was yet to come. On day 8, Morrison called me urgently. "Mr. Patterson, you need to see this. Can you meet me now?" We met at the same Tim Hortons. He showed me his laptop, video footage from that morning. "I followed your son to a law office in Toronto. Guess who else was there?" The video showed Michael entering a building with Tyler. But then another person joined them. Someone I recognized. "Jessica, are you sure?" I asked, even though I could clearly see her face. "Positive. I followed her after. She went back to your son's house and pulled out a suitcase from the basement. Inside were documents. I managed to get photos. He showed me the pictures. Insurance policies, claim forms, bank statements showing deposits of tens of thousands of dollars. She's not just involved. She's the bookkeeper. She keeps track of all the claims, manages the money, makes sure they don't file too many claims from the same address or with the same company." I felt sick. This wasn't just my son anymore. This was the woman he was planning to marry, the woman I'd welcomed into our family, who called me Dad, who'd held my hand at Margaret's funeral. "There's more," Morrison said quietly. "They're planning something bigger. I managed to get audio from outside the lawyer's office. They're talking about staging a multi-car pileup, involving 4 vehicles, multiple injury claims. They're talking about a potential payout of over $200,000. When? Next week. They're scouting locations now, somewhere on the 401 during rush hour." I stared at the computer screen, at my son's face, animated and excited as he discussed his criminal plans. This wasn't about easy money anymore. This was about potentially causing real accidents, putting real people at risk. "What are my options?" I asked. Morrison closed his laptop and looked at me directly. "Legally, you have 3 choices. 1, you confront your son and hope he stops. Based on what I've seen, that's unlikely. 2, you distance yourself, make it clear to the insurance company that you were deceived, and let them handle it. They'll probably go after him criminally, and you might avoid charges. And 3, you go to the police yourself. You turn over all this evidence. Cooperate fully with their investigation. It's the hardest option, but it's the only one that might prevent that pileup they're planning. If they actually go through with it, and someone gets hurt." He didn't need to finish that sentence. I sat there in that Tim Hortons for a long time after Morrison left, drinking cold coffee and watching families come and go, parents with their children, laughing, trusting, innocent. I thought about Margaret. What would she want me to do? She'd always believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. But this wasn't just hard. This was choosing to potentially send my own son to prison. But then I thought about those families on the 401. What if Michael's fake accident caused a real one? What if someone's mother, someone's child, got hurt because I stayed silent? I knew what I had to do. I just didn't know if I was strong enough to do it. That evening, I called Detective Sarah Williams at the Peel Regional Police Fraud Division. Morrison had given me her name, said she was good, fair, would handle this properly. Detective Williams, my name is Richard Patterson. I need to report an insurance fraud operation, and my son is involved. The words felt like glass in my throat. She came to my house the next morning with another officer. I gave them everything. The documents I'd signed, the folder from my trunk, Morrison's reports, all of it. I watched her face as she went through the evidence, saw her expression harden. Mr. Patterson, this is serious. Your son is looking at multiple charges, fraud, conspiracy, possibly more depending on what else we uncover. You understand that? I do. And you're certain you want to proceed with this? Once we start investigating, we can't stop just because he's your son. I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Margaret before she died. We'd been talking about Michael, about our hopes for his future. Promise me you'll always do right by him, she'd said, her hand weak in mine. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, real love means not letting people destroy themselves. I'm certain, I told Detective Williams. The investigation moved quickly. Within 3 days, they had enough evidence to arrest Michael, Tyler, Jessica, and 4 others. The police raided the body shop, seized records, froze bank accounts. I was there when they arrested Michael. Detective Williams had warned me they were coming, given me the choice to be present or not. I chose to be there. He deserved to know it was me, that I was the one who'd turned him in. When the police knocked on his door that Thursday morning, I was standing beside them. Michael opened the door in his pajamas, coffee mug in hand. His face went through so many emotions when he saw me. Confusion, disbelief, understanding, and finally, rage. You? He said. You did this? I had to, I said, and my voice broke. I couldn't let you hurt people. I couldn't let you destroy yourself. Destroy myself? I was finally making real money. Do you know how hard it is out there? How expensive everything is? This was supposed to be our future. He gestured at the house, at Jessica, who was now standing behind him in shock. This isn't a future, Michael. This is prison. You self-righteous bastard. Mom would be ashamed of you. That hurt worse than anything. But I stood my ground. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become, and she'd have done the same thing I did. She loved you too much to let you destroy yourself. The officers moved in then, reading Michael his rights, handcuffing him. He shouted at me the whole way to the police car, words I won't repeat. Jessica just stared at me, tears running down her face. The last thing Michael said before they put him in the car was, "You're dead to me. You hear me? Dead." The hardest part wasn't the arrest. It wasn't even the trial, which lasted 4 months and ended with Michael receiving 3 years in prison. The hardest part was the silence that came after. For the first year, Michael refused to speak to me. My letters were returned unopened. Phone calls went unanswered. I attended every court date, sat in the gallery, hoping he'd look at me, acknowledge me. He never did. The rest of our family took sides. Margaret's sisters stopped speaking to me. Some of our old friends thought I'd done the right thing. Others thought I was a monster for turning in my own son. The insurance company thanked me, actually. They'd recovered over $400,000 in false claims. They didn't press charges against me for the documents I'd signed, accepting that I'd been deceived. But none of that mattered when I sat alone in my house at night, looking at photos of Michael as a boy, wondering if I'd made the right choice. The answer came 15 months later. I was at the grocery store when I heard someone call my name. I turned to see Jessica. She looked different, tired, but somehow clearer, if that makes sense. "Mr. Patterson," she said. "Can we talk?" We sat in my car in the parking lot. She told me she'd spent 6 months in prison, gotten out on parole. She'd been going to therapy, working a real job at a bank, trying to rebuild her life. "Michael's different now too," she said. "He's angry, but he's also awake. He's in a program in prison, learning, accounting, working with a counselor. He told me last month that he finally understands why you did it." My hands were shaking. "He said that? He's not ready to talk to you yet. The anger is still there. But he said to tell you, if I saw you, that he gets it now. That you saved his life, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. I sat there in that parking lot and cried, really cried, for the first time since Margaret died. Michael got out of prison after serving 18 months. He didn't call me right away, but 3 weeks later, I received a letter. It was short. Dad, I'm out. I'm not ready to see you yet, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I've got a job as a bookkeeper at a nonprofit. It's not much, but it's honest. Jessica and I are done, which is probably for the best. I've been seeing a therapist. We talk a lot about you, about Mom, about the choices I made. I'm not going to lie and say I'm not still angry. Part of me probably always will be. But I also know that if you hadn't stopped me, I might have killed someone with that staged pileup, or spent 10 years in prison instead of 18 months, or died a fraud, never knowing who I really was. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to have coffee with you again, but I wanted you to know that I'm alive because of you, not in spite of you. Your son, Michael. I keep that letter in my wallet. I read it sometimes when the loneliness gets too heavy, when I wonder if I did the right thing. It's been 2 years now since the arrest. Michael and I have had coffee 3 times. Conversations are still awkward, careful, like we're walking on ice. But they're happening. He tells me about his work. I tell him about the garden. We don't talk about the past much. Last month, he asked if he could come by the house for dinner. Just him, not Jessica. They're not back together and probably won't be. I made his favorite meal, the one Margaret used to make. Pot roast with potatoes and carrots. We ate mostly in silence. But as he was leaving, he stopped at the door. Dad, he said, not quite looking at me. I'm starting to understand something. Love isn't about always saying yes. Sometimes it's about saying no, even when it costs you everything. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mom would be proud of you, he said quietly. Then he was gone. I stood there at my door for a long time, watching his taillights disappear down the street. The house felt less empty somehow. If you're reading this, or watching this, and you're in a similar situation with someone you love, I want you to know something. The right choice isn't always the easy choice. Sometimes love means enforcing boundaries, even painful ones. Sometimes it means calling the police on your own child. Sometimes it means being willing to be hated, if it means keeping them safe. But I also want you to know this. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags because you love someone. Don't sign documents you haven't read. Don't enable destructive behavior because you're afraid of conflict. And most importantly, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's self-destruction, even if they hate you for it. I won't pretend I don't still wonder sometimes if I did the right thing. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt that my relationship with my son is changed forever. But I sleep at night knowing that Michael is alive, that he's building an honest life, that he didn't hurt anyone in a staged accident. That's worth the cost. Even if the cost was everything. If you've been through something similar, or if you're facing a decision like this now, please share your story in the comments. You're not alone. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most important changes. And remember, whether you're dealing with adult children, family members, or loved ones who've lost their way, you cannot save people from themselves. You can only refuse to help them destroy themselves and hope that one day they'll understand why. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here.